Hi everyone, got a really cool session for you here on responsive canvas components. These are reusable components that can be used in different apps that you might have. Now, the thing that's also cool about this is they're responsive. The other thing that you'll actually see is that we can have behaviors in them. So in the case that we're going to have a pop-up that we're going to show. Now, the person leading this session out is called Jamie Dowdall, and he works at Capgemini, very much an expert in this field. He's a super user, and we're going to join this part way into the session, and he's going to show us what components can do, and we're also going to build this responsive pop-up. What you'll also see is that we'll actually be using behaviors to trigger events that effectively exist outside of the component. So slightly strange thing. I would invite you to actually potentially look at that part of this more than once, because it takes a bit of a while to sink in. I'm going to hand over to Jamie, and he's going to take us through building responsive canvas components.
Okay, excellent. Talking about this header area here, and how we've got six controls on there. So yeah, in fact, this whole screen that you can see here is actually one component. This whole screen is actually one component. With components, we can add certain input and output properties. Rory's covered quite a bit of this on his course, and I'll be looking at how you set these properties up in my live demo. For the example component, we can change some of the various properties through these for the component on the screen. We can change various properties and aspects of the screen by updating these properties. For example, we have a nice sub-menu area here. A screen might not require the sub area. So what I can do, I can set that to 0, and that gets rid of that sub-menu area. As you'll see, everything is really responsive. We can update the title of the component. Components demo data spinners, and that updates the title there. If I select the component again, we might want this sidebar. We might want to use some pop-out functionality on this sidebar. So I can change the width of that, and we could even put an if statement in there connected to a button. So when we click the button, the width of this sidebar changes to, say, 200, and that could be a nice panel for, say, filters, for example. And as you can see, everything else is updated and is responsive in the component. That's it for that screen view. I'd like to just demonstrate another component that I've built, which is a pop-up form. So I'm going to add that now. It's under custom, and it's called pop-up flexi. This is a pop-up form that I've built, and it's actually triggered. It can be triggered from this plus button here. So when you click the plus button, this component will appear. As you can see, we've got a nice header area here. We have a workspace area here, and we have 2 buttons at the bottom that are separated out nicely. These buttons can be used to actually submit. For example, we could embed a form into this component, and these buttons could be used to submit the form. I've actually created another pop-up. It's sort of I've called it a pop-up work area component, and this can sort of sit in the other components. And for example, in this pop-up, we might want a custom a tabbed interface. But what we can do with this component, I've updated the properties so we can switch off the tabbed interface, and it will give us a nice background panel. Or we might want to host a form in this component, so we can switch on this nice label here, and that can be updated. I'll just show you a quick example. Hopefully I'm back in PowerPoint. on the screen share. And here's an example of how I've used the full screen component. As you can see, we've got filters applied there, and I've nested a gallery here. As for the pop-up, as you can see here, I've used it for a form, and I've used the mini component that I put in there, the work area component, to create some nice separation there for the form. And that's what I've just demonstrated, really. This pop-up work area, this work area component doesn't necessarily have to be on a pop-up form. We can use it for layout. We might want a working space here, for example, a form, and we might want to copy it and have say a menu on the right here. So let's close that. And as you can see, we could create a gallery in here with a little form at the bottom, and we can submit comments about anything that's on the left here in the placeholder on the left. Okay. As I mentioned, we're going to have a go at creating this pop-up form. It won't be as polished as this because I'm conscious of time, but I'm going to have a go at building this pop-up. I'm going to try and make it responsive. We're going to get a label in there so the user can update the properties, and we're going to get this button panel in at the bottom. And as you can see, as I shift the component about, the gallery, the buttons at the bottom stay true to the actual stay true to the component. So I'm going to switch. I'm in Power Apps. I've been working with components for about a year now, and I've always struggled getting the information out of the components and back into the application.
Yeah.
Came across a blog post by a guy called Michael Shazwitz, which has really helped me take my components to the next level. I knew how to put the input properties in. I knew how to work with the responsiveness, but I always struggled getting information back from my buttons into the application. A lot of what Michael's covered in his blog, I'll be demonstrating in this walkthrough, as his demonstration was really key to me returning the values from a pop-up component into my application. Okay, I'm going to switch across to, I'm in the component library at the moment. I'm going to switch across here to components, and I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to name this component, I'm going to prefix it with COM, and I'm going to name it pop DS, pop-up data spinners. And the first thing I'm going to do to this, we've got a blank canvas here. It's got a fixed width, it's got a width and a height, and it's got a background color. The first thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to add a container. So containers are on the tree view, they're under the layout menu, and I'm just going to add a standard container here. The container is going to help make the component responsive when we pull it across into an application. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hook the container to the left panel here, and I'm going to hook the container to the top, I'm going to set the X value to 0, and I'm going to set the Y value to 0 as well. That sits nicely in the top left-hand corner of the canvas. At this point, I'm going to set the canvas fill to transparent. This is quite important. So the background container, the background canvas of the component is actually set to transparent. Back to the container, we've set the X coordinate to 0, and we've set the Y to 0. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the width to the parent dot width. So that matches the background canvas. The width will always match the width of the background canvas. As you can see, the component is the parent to the container. I'm going to name this container pop, prefix CON pop, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the height. Parent dot height. Okay. To demonstrate this, I'm going to set the fill color of the container to a sort of murky blue. And what I'm going to do, the component library allows you an area to build your components, and it also allows you a screen area, to see what your components will look like when you pull them into the app. So I'm going to select the tree view, and I'm going to click custom. That's where your components live. And I'm going to click component pop DS. As we can see, we've pulled the components into the screen area, and as you can see, the container is responsive to the canvas. This is super important for me, because I've made a bodge of a few components not using containers, and I'll be able to demonstrate my bodging at the end. So I'm going back into the components screen now. I'm in the sort of testing screen that comes with the components library. So I'm switching back so I can work on my component. I'm going to set the fill color of the component of the container to transparent. There we go. That is transparent now. Okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a nice border into the container, and that's going to be the surround for our component. So what I'm going to use, it sounds a bit silly, I'm going to use a button here. I like buttons. They've got nice round edges, and you can change the radius. I find that they work okay for sort of backgrounds. I'm going to disable the button so we don't get any of the hover properties. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of the text as well. So I've just got rid of the text there. And what I want to do, I want this button to sit quite nicely within the canvas and the container. As you can see, I had the container selected when I inserted the button, and I'm going to name the button now. I'm going to name it BTN border, and I'm going to set the X value to 5, and I'm going to set the Y value to 5. So that just sits right on the edge there with a nice little buffer there away from the background of the canvas. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to set the parent.width. Sorry, I'm going to set the width of the border button to match the width of its parent, which is the container. As you can see, it's overshot a little bit there because we've got this buffer of 5 that we've added to the X value. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to minus not 5 but 10 off the width, and that gives us a nice edge here. I'm going to do exactly the same with the height. So parent dot height, take away 10, and there we are. We've got a nice border in there now. I quite like that. What I'm going to do now, obviously we've used the disable button. I've named the button and I've set the coordinates and set it out to the screen, and we've got this nice permanent 5 pixel padding, and that's because it's in the container. It will be responsive now. I'm going to add the first of the input properties now to the component. So what we're going to do, we're going to allow the user to be able to update the color of this border. So I'm going to click new custom property. I like to categorize my properties by what they're affecting, and this property is affecting the color. So I like to prefix it with col pipe border, and then I put the name. So I prefix it with the category, and then col pipe border color. I'm going to set it to an input property, Components have input properties, output properties, and behaviors. We'll be looking at input properties and behaviors tonight, but we're going to set up a few input properties first. So we've got an input property. We're affecting the color of the border. So I'm going to click color. There we go. And I'm going to create this property. So what I've now created this property, and the default color, by clicking the actual label here, you can go into the default, and the default color is black. I'm going to change this to light blue. And as you can see, nothing at all has happened. That's because we haven't attached it to the disabled border property of the button. That's what we want the user to update from the component. So I'm going to select the button now, and I'm going to find the disabled border property, the disabled border color, and I'm going to reference the component first, com.ds. So let's just reference that, com.ds, and it's giving me this nasty error. And all I have to do now is click the dot, and the properties will come up. So there's our custom property. So it's an input property. I'm going to click that, and as you can see, the border color changes to a nice light blue there. Let's have a look at how that looks on the screen. We'll switch to screen mode. As you can see, here it is. The border's updated to blue. We've got a new custom property on the right here, and we can change that to our heart's content now. So the user can update the custom property inside the application. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. What I said about having the canvas as transparent, this has caught me out a few times as well. As you can see, as I'm moving it slightly, as it hits the blue here, I hope you can see that. As it hits the blue, it shows the background through the actual blank canvas. I've been caught out in the past. I've tried to make some nice components, and I haven't set my background canvas to transparent. And when you hover over various other parts, you get this horrible white sort of background around it. So that's quite important to get that right. It's caught me out a few times as well. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit.
Everyone,
I'm going to go back into components.
Just make sure.
And we're going to add a very simple input property. Another input property. We could add an input property here to change the background fill of the background of the component, but we've already done a similar task with the border color. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep pressing on, do some more interesting stuff. But basically, if you do want to change the fill color of the background, just repeat what I've just done for the border color and update the disabled fill, and assign the disabled fill to the new input property. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a label to the component. That has gone in the container. No, it hasn't, and neither has my button. Okay, what I need to do here, I'm just gonna, to make it responsive, I want my button inside the container. So I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to paste it into the container. There we go. That's messed me up a little bit. If I set that to 5 and I set that to 5, I think we're good again. Yes, we are. I'm going to delete this label completely, and I'm going to make sure I've got the container connected this time, selected. So I click the label, and as you can see, that's landed in the container. So great stuff. Can't get everything right. I'm going to label that. I'm going to name the label as label message. And what we're going to create here, we're going to create a little message that the user can update. So we're going to create another input property. So to do that, it's pretty much the same as what we did with the color. I'm going to select the component, and I'm going to create a new property. And I'm going to prefix this with txt. No, I'm not. I'm going to call it lab because it's a label pipe display message. Okay, this is another input property and it's going to be text. So I'm just going to create that. The default is text, but I'm going to change the default to add message here. Nothing changes because we haven't connected it. So we select the label now and we go into the text property of the label, and we simply reference the component again, and we dot through to the new label message property, and here it is. And if we go across to the application, we have a new input property here. So we could add a message, are you sure you wish to delete? Okay, so we're getting there a little bit. It's not going to look as nice as this one. It took me a lot longer to create this one, but we'll get a lot of the key user journey in there on how I went about creating it. I'm going to switch back to components again, and here comes the tricky bit. I'm gonna add the buttons to the bottom of the container, of the component, and like I said, we want them to be responsive. We want them to hook to the bottom. I want the user to be able to decide how many buttons they want on the panel. They might want one big one along the bottom. They might want two. They might want three. And this was a really good tip that I've picked up from Mikkel's blog, and I will post the blog. I'm basically replicating what Mikkel's done here, but trying to relate it to my own experiences in building these components. So we're going to add a horizontal gallery inside the container that's going to hold our buttons. And here it is. It's landed in the container. We're good. I'm going to name this gal bottom buttons, and we've already got that somewhere in the app. So I'm going to call it gal bottom buttons data spinners. There we are.
Good.
And we've got our horizontal gallery. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set the X coordinate of the horizontal gallery to the X coordinate of the inner of the border, btn border dot X. And what I'm now going to do, I'm going to work out the Y value so it remains attached to the bottom. And this is good for learning about responsiveness and things like that. And the way I'm going to set this up, I'm going to use the Y value of the border plus the height of the border minus the height of the gallery itself, and that will ensure it sticks to the bottom. So I'm going to do this slowly. I'm going to reference the border, and I'm going to use the Y property of it. It's now stuck to the top. I'm going to add the height of the border. There we go. And now it's gone right underneath. So what I need to do now is take away the height of the gallery itself. So I just click self, take away self dot height. I've used the self property there to reference the control that we're dealing with. Okay, so that's hooked the gallery to the bottom of the screen. Still got a little bit of a problem here with the width. So I'm going to fix this now. That's a dead simple fix. It's the same width as the border. So I'm going to reference the border in the width property, and I'm going to select width. There we go. That's sort of sitting nicely now. I'm quite happy with that. I'm now going to add another input property to the component. So I'm going to select the component, and this input property is going to be a table input property, and it's going to hold the information of the items that we want in the gallery at the bottom of the screen here. So I've selected component, and I'm going to click new custom property. I'm going to call this tab prefix bottom buttons, and it's an input property, and we want to use a table this time. When I create this input property,
Is it just me, or have
some default values for this table? Some values for this table. I'm going to replace the sample table default with the tabular information here. Let's have a look at that. So we've got a table here, and it's referencing, we're going to add some buttons to this gallery basically. And what this is doing, it's setting up the items property of the gallery to hold the properties that we want to attach to the button. We've got name. It looks like we're going to create an OK cancel button per. We've got the fill color, we've got the text color, we've got the border color, we've got a selected fill, and we've got the order. If we want, this is going to set the gallery up for 2 buttons. If we want 3 buttons, we might want approve, request an update, or reject, and we might want to color them red, amber, green. We can do that by updating this in the component. So at the minute we've got 2 buttons. We're set up for 2 buttons. I'm going to select the gallery, and I'm going to use the items property to reference the table that we just put in the component. So I'm going to reference component.ds, and I'm going to dock through to the input property, which is a table. And believe it or not, that has attached our tabular information to the gallery. It doesn't look like it's done anything at the moment, but what we need to do now is we need to add a button into the template of the gallery. Galleries are sort of split in, they have a template area. So when you select the gallery, if you click to the left, this is the template area of the gallery. And if you were to insert a button into the first template, whatever you insert, whatever you do in the first template, it's always replicated throughout the rest of the gallery. So as you can see, I've added a button into the first template, into the template of the gallery, and I'm going to set the width of the button to fill the gallery's template size. So I've referenced the gallery here, and I'm going to click template size, template width, sorry, and great. That has matched the button to the size of the template of the gallery. It's a bit higgledy-piggledy at the moment because we've got an X coordinate of 24. So I'm going to set that to 0. And yeah, it's getting there a little bit, but it's still looking a bit wonky on this side. That's because we need to not only remove padding from the gallery. It's got a little padding of 5, as you can see. There's a little bit of white space here. I'm going to remove that padding. Template paddings can make your galleries look really good if they're sort of horizontal galleries. I love using template paddings, but in this instance, I'm going to get rid of that. Still not quite there, but we've got our 2 buttons. So what I need to do now, the template size, if you look at the template size here, it's set to 320, and the actual width of the gallery is 630. So If you double 320, it's overlapping by 10 pixels. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the template size of the gallery to, it's going to be the width of the gallery, self.width, divided by the number of items in the gallery. I mentioned earlier that we might want 3 buttons in there, we might want 4, we might want 1. I've set it to actually the template. I'm going to set it to the amount of items in the gallery. So if I click count rows, if I type count rows and I open my bracket, we can self-reference the gallery. So we're referencing the item that we've got selected, and I'm going to select self.all items, and I'm going to close the bracket. And now that fits just perfectly. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I'm not going to fancy the buttons up. We could get rid of these inner radiuses, but I don't think we've got time to do stuff like that at the moment. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm gonna set the gallery height to be the height of the button. So I'm going to make the button pretty decent height. I'm going to give it 50, and I'm going to set the gallery height. I've got the gallery selected. I'm going to select the gallery height to gallery height as it. No, it hasn't. Okay. Just bear with me. We've got the Y value of the gallery. It's button border. Yeah. The button's not quite sitting at 0. So if I change that to 0, there we go. We've rescued that. Now we've got our 2 buttons in there. As with any item in a gallery, the gallery has, as with any item in the gallery, I'm going to connect the button to the table properties now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first button in the gallery, and I'm going to select the fill property of that button. Here we go. And yeah, I'm going to set it to the gallery's item source and click the fill color. So basically, we're referencing the gallery's items as you would normally in a gallery. So the fill color of this is this item dot button fill. That was the property that we had in the table. That's come through as a blue. I'm going to do the same with the text on the buttons now. So if I click the text property of the buttons, and I'm going to reference this item dot name, and this will put cancel and OK onto the buttons. Yeah, I'm going to shrink that down a little bit to say 15. I'm going to decrease my button size to 40. And as you can see, let's have a look at it in the screen. Yeah, it's almost there. The buttons are sort of hooking quite nicely onto the bottom. And the last task that we have to do now is, the label's not quite responsive there, but we need to just set the width and that. We can do that. That's quite easy. The next task that we have to do now is we have to get a response from the component based on which button has been pressed. So I'm going to drop back into the component screen. This is the tricky bit. We've got our buttons in place. I want to detect which button has been clicked. So I'm going to add a custom property to the component, and I'm going to call it onSelect. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that that is a behavior property, because what we want to do, we want a behavior allows us to trigger custom events and return values back through something called parameters. So if I've got an onSelect behavior of type text, I can now set a parameter for that behavior. So if I click parameter here and I call this selected button, and I'd set this to required, and I keep it as text. We've attached a parameter to that behavior. If you, okay, I'm just going to create that. If you don't find behavior on this menu, simply go to settings, and it will be you can find it in upcoming features here, and it's under experimental and enhanced component properties. So just switch that on, and then you'll have to save it, and the behavior properties will appear. Okay, we've added our parameter to that. We've named the parameter. Selected button. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the button in the gallery. I'm going to go to the onSelect property of that button, and I'm going to attach that behavior and that parameter to the I'm going to attach the onSelect of the button to the new behavior that we've created. So I reference my component again, and I click the onSelect. I dot through to the onSelect, which is the behavior that we've just created. We've got the horrible squiggle underneath. That means it needs more information. I'm going to open the bracket, and we can add the parameter now, which is selected button. So we click that, and then we close that bracket. So what's happening now, when we click the button, it's looking at the name of the button from the table. The gallery has a table as its data source, and we click that button, and it's going to send it back to the application. Last bit now, I'm going to switch across to the screen. Because we've added the onSelect to the first item in the gallery, that works for the rest of the items. So we've nothing to worry about. We're always dealing with the first item. I'm going to switch back across to screens now, and here's our component, and now I need to determine which button has been pressed. So I'm going to click the component, and I'm going to go to the onSelect property. Here it is, and I'm going to set a local variable named local selected button. And I'm just going to paste that in now for speed. So it's a local variable. It's called lock selected button, and it's referencing the property that's coming back from the onSelect of the component. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a label just down here that's going to tell us which button has been pressed. Lock selected button. There we go. And I'm going to hold down. I'm going to play the app. And if I click cancel here, it shows us that we've got cancel. It's sending the parameter to the variable. Same with OK. I'm going to add. I've got a little button here that has a local variable called lock show pop-up to true. What I can do now is back to the onSelect property. After the, I can hide the component by selecting, by using the visible property, the local variable that I used to show the component. I can set that to false, and now when we click the pop-up and we click a button, we get the value sent back from the parameter, and we get the cancel. I'll just wrap this up. I'm going to add a quick if statement here to send a notification to the screen. If the local variable selected button equals cancel, notify cancel has been clicked. Or else, we've only got two buttons in there, notify OK has been clicked. Close off the if statement, and there we go. If we click OK, we're using that local variable now. We've sent a simple notification, but in that if statement, you could submit a form, you could navigate to another page, and that's really where the magic is. It's in this if statement. It's what to do when a different button is selected. And to add to add another button to this component, you simply go into the table property and you just simply add another table level here, another set of values. So we've got OK, cancel, good night, and hopefully I'm going to hide this formula by now and we'll have 3 buttons. Yeah, pleased with that. Yeah, that's sort of my component journey. I owe a lot of that demonstration to Mikkel's blog. It really helped me really bring my components to life and get those values back and forth. I can't hear anyone. I'm not sure what's going on with my Zoom, but I hope that was useful to people. I hope you like what I've been doing with components, and this was a real eureka moment, getting parameters back and forth for me. It really helped me with my components.
What a cool session. I couldn't have done this without Jamie. If you like this sort of thing and you want to learn more about Power Apps, then make sure you sign up for the course. You can sign up for free. You'll still get the notifications, and also sign up for the YouTube channel. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye and I'll see you sometime soon.